All right, so today we're going to dig into a pretty radical idea about education, and it comes straight from the mind of Elon Musk. He's all about building things from the ground up using first principles. So the big question is, what would happen if one of the world's most famous engineers decided to rebuild school? Let's find out. Okay, so Musk looks at pretty much everything through an engineering lens, right? And education is no different. For him, he sees it like this. You're basically downloading data and algorithms into your brain. I mean, thinking about it that way, it's a wild analogy. And it immediately makes you wonder, are we running the best software? And that right there, that's the heart of his whole argument. He really believes that our current system, the very operating system our schools run on, is just fundamentally flawed. It's clunky, it's inefficient. It's not just about what we're learning, it's about how we're learning it. So what's the fundamental bug in the system, according to Musk? Well, for him, it all comes down to one single missing piece of the puzzle: the why, the reason, the purpose behind it all. And look, this isn't just some abstract theory for him. It's actually super personal. I mean, a lot of us can probably relate to that feeling of school just being a total drag, right? He called it torture. And for Musk, that feeling isn't just kids being kids. It's a major red flag, a symptom of a much, much deeper problem. This is where it gets really interesting, because it kind of gets into the science of how our brains work. Musk argues that our brains have evolved to be super efficient. They're built to save energy. So if we can't connect a piece of information to some kind of purpose or problem, our brain's natural reaction is just to delete it, to make space. So in a way, traditional school is literally forcing us to fight against our own biology. And this table here just lays it all out so clearly. On one side, you've got your typical conventional education. What's the motivation? Usually, it's fear of getting a bad grade. And you're fed all this information that feels totally random and irrelevant. So what does your brain do? It tries to dump it as fast as possible. But then you look at the other side, this problem-based model. The motivation is genuine excitement to solve something. The information is relevant right away. And your brain, it's actually eager to hold on to it. It's a total night and day difference. Okay, so if the big problem is learning stuff without any context, what's the fix? Well, this brings us right to the core of Musk's whole idea, his first principle for education. And here it is, the big idea: teach to the problem, not the tools. It's so simple, right? The idea is that instead of learning skills in a vacuum, you start with a real, tangible problem. And that desire to solve the problem, well, it creates a natural, almost urgent need to learn the tools to get it done. This is his famous engine analogy. And honestly, it makes the whole thing click. Think about it. The old way, the tools-first approach, is like this. First, you take a course on screwdrivers, then a whole separate course on wrenches. You're just sitting there like, why am I learning this? But the problem-first approach, it's completely different. It's like, here's an engine, let's take it apart. And to do that, you're gonna need a wrench and a screwdriver. Suddenly their purpose is crystal clear. And you can see how this whole path just builds on itself, step by step. First, you've got the problem. Let's take this engine apart. That immediately forces you to discover the tools you need. You're like, I need a wrench for this bolt. Right then and there, the why becomes totally obvious. And because that information is so relevant in that moment, your brain just grabs onto it. The knowledge actually sticks. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, right? But did he ever actually, do it? Oh yeah. He created a real-life laboratory for these ideas. Yup. To solve the very real problem of his own kids hating school, he started a tiny private school called Ad Astra, which means to the stars. This became the real-world test for his whole problem over tools philosophy. And when I say tiny, I mean tiny. He started with just 14 kids, and that was totally on purpose. He wanted to get as far away as possible from what he calls the assembly line model of regular schools, where every kid is expected to learn the exact same thing at the exact same time, no matter what. So at Ad Astra, they basically threw out the old rulebook. No more rigid grade levels like first grade, second grade. They completely rejected that one-size-fits-all assembly line model. Instead, the entire education was tailored to each kid's actual talents and interests. And the result? According to Musk, it was simple. The kids really loved going to school. The chore was gone. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Whether you're talking about one tiny school or the entire education system, what's the single most important lesson we can pull from this whole experiment? You know, when you get right down to it, it all boils down to this one thing: relevance. Relevance is the key that unlocks everything else: motivation, retention, you name it. When we actually understand why we're learning something, it's a complete game changer. It's the difference between information just going in one ear and out the other, and knowledge that's actually built to last. And that leaves us with a really big, powerful question to think about. If the whole point of education is to solve problems, and if we were to rebuild it from the ground up, starting with a problem instead of a subject, what is the most important problem we should be teaching first?